Well, it seems we are slowly returning to normal. We've still got to wear our masks, though. I must say, increasingly, I find shop owners not quite so concerned with whether, and I get absent-minded, and I occasionally come out of a shop or a dairy saying, well, I just bought the paper and I didn't have my mask on and no one noticed. I think I was on the road yesterday, went in to stop for a pie. Oh, where did I stop for the pie? Was it Wairu or Tai Happy? And person didn't have a mask on. I didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. I had a mask on, bought the pie, left. Everything's fine. But the big one coming off is the travel restrictions that require you to test before coming for New Zealand. They're going to be scrapped from early next week. This comes in the wake of mounting pressure from the public and indeed political pressure to do away with those pre- and post-flight test requirements. Like many COVID-related adjustments, New Zealand has lagged behind much of the rest of the world in returning to its, pre-pandemic settings. The US has dropped the restrictions along with most of Europe, Australia, and many Pacific Island nations. So, what practical effect will this have on the appeal of New Zealand as a destination? Has it come too late? And what other restrictions, which we're currently living under, might the government do well to get off its chuff and remove? To discuss this, we're joined by National's COVID-19 response spokesperson, Chris Bishop. Bish, welcome to the program. Nice to have you with us.
Good morning, Storm. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Still haven't had COVID.
I apologise for my croaky voice. I've got the spicy cough. I've got the Rona.
Have you got? When did you test positive?
What are we today? Thursday. So it was Tuesday morning.
And how are you doing?
Oh, look, I'm okay, to be honest. I'm vaccinated. I'm boosted. I was going to say relatively fit. I suppose that's true. I suppose I'm reasonably fit. I'm youngish.
You're an MP in Parliament. You're not fit. Okay, you know that.
Yeah, well, I ran my personal best for the 5K run just a month or so ago. But yeah, I take your point. Yeah. But yeah, I'm okay. I'm fine.
All right. But, now, how long have you guys been saying these tests were unnecessary or should be removed?
Oh, we've been saying them since the caucus retreat, which I'm just trying to think of. That was early February. Late January, early February. So, yeah, at least 3 or 4 months now we've been saying the pre-departure testing should go. Look, it made sense at the start, right? I mean, we actually called for it. You might remember 2 years ago we had that big back and forth with Labor. We said, look, if you're going to run an elimination strategy and try and keep every case of COVID out of your community, you should have to test negative before you get on a plane and come to New Zealand.
Yep.
And Labor, you might remember, Labor said, "Oh no, that's way too difficult. No, the experts aren't recommending that, etc., etc." This was Dr. Shane Reddy's idea, and then basically they did an about face and said, "Oh, actually, yeah, that is a good idea. We'll put it in." And so we've had it for a long time, and so it made sense at the start. But now we don't have an elimination strategy anymore. Now we have a basically let it go strategy, and we've got I don't know how many thousand cases per day of Omicron of COVID. And so, of course, a few extra people trickling off the plane with COVID. That maybe not.
Yeah, we're making our own COVID here now, aren't we, Bish? We don't have to worry about importing it.
Exactly. It's here now. It's here now and it's not going away. So a few extra people trickling over the border with COVID and been picked up for the test. I mean, it doesn't really matter. And look, to be honest, the government itself admits that the value of the testing is very low. I had Chris up to the full committee. It was a month ago now, and I said, look, when are you going to get rid of this? It's just causing unnecessary hassle. And he said, oh, yeah, no, you are right. It is very low value. We're going to get rid of it soon. But it's just taken forever. It's like everything with the COVID response. It just seems to take forever after it's sort of obvious it needs to be done.
Yeah, it's not a nimble response, is it? What effect do you think it will have on our appeal as a tourist destination and a destination for people coming in from overseas? Clearly it enhances it.
I think it will have a difference at the margins. I mean, the major thing it just does is it just makes it easier for Kiwis to go offshore for, a couple of days, 2-3 days. I mean, you take sort of a weekend trip to Australia, right, which a lot of Kiwis used to do pre-pandemic. You nip over on the early morning flight on Friday, come back late Sunday, give yourself 3 days in Sydney or Melbourne or whatever. That's basically been impossible to do, right? Because you used to have to get a test to get into Australia, then you used to have to get a test to get into New Zealand, back into New Zealand, and if you tested positive in Australia, you couldn't get on the plane and you're stuck in Australia for 7 days, extra days. So it just caused chaos, right, from a travel planning point of view, and it made it much less likely that people would do that. So once we've done away with pre-departure testing, that won't come into effect anymore, and so you'll be able to travel with a lot more certainty. So, but business travel as well. I've had a number of business people, surprising number actually, who said to me, "Look, we used to do the old day-night trip to Sydney or Melbourne or whatever, go and visit some clients, go and visit some potential clients. We just don't do that anymore because of the pre-departure testing." So once you get rid of that, people will make that trip more. So look, I think it will make a difference at the margins. I don't think anyone's sort of sitting there in Europe saying, "Oh, I'm not going to come to New Zealand because I have to get a negative test." I don't think it's quite like that, but it obviously is a factor that people would weigh up. So you get rid of it, it just makes it slightly easier to sell New Zealand to the world, and that's a good thing.
All right. I guess bigger picture then, and we are still, are we not, operating under legislation that gives special powers to the Director of General of Health in time of pandemic. We are not back to the way our democracy and accountability was before COVID, before the pandemic, right?
That is correct. The Public Health Response Act. In fact, there's a motion before Parliament right now, which it will be considering next week, to extend the Act to the end of this year.
Do you think that is necessary or not?
Well, no, I mean, our view is that we should replace the legislation with, potentially more bespoke legislation, which just significantly narrows the power and the ability of the government to put in place various restrictions.
Would those restrictions include mandates?
No, our view on mandates is that we should phase them out. In fact, I was reading a paper last night from Sir Brian Roche's group, which is Sir David Skegg's group, which is Sir David Skegg's, one of the epidemiologists who's been advising the government. They wrote to, he and his colleagues wrote to Aisha Verrill in March and recommended the removal of all the mandates except for a narrow range of fields like corrections and health and border workers, but they said get rid of them for the police and defence force and things like that. So, it's interesting. Our view is we should start to phase them out.
All right, and replace the PHRA, the Public Health Response Act. What about wearing masks in the supermarket, which Michael Baker told us here weeks ago was a very marginal chance that would improve things much? What about the masks?
Yeah, look, I think we're at about the right point now where we can start to phase those out. If you think about it, the mask wearing is sporadic and it's spotty, right? That's coverage. So, you have to wear them in the supermarket. People take them off when they walk outside. You don't wear them in bars anymore. People don't wear them outside. The mask wearing is quite spotty in terms of its coverage. So, does me putting a mask on when I go and pick up some bacon and eggs in the supermarket, does it, it's kind of really make a difference? If you do a simple cost-benefit analysis, does it make much of a difference? I would say probably not. If you want to wear a mask, go for it. I'll tell you a story, Chris.
There is in the office of the platform here, on one of the whiteboards, a count of the number of times that I walk back into the office muttering under my breath, having gone out to get lunch or do something, or go across the road and get the newspaper, and I come back going, masks. And it is a standing joke in the office, and that's just got something to do with my memory. Look, the other thing, I guess, is you are, strangely enough, living proof at the moment that we are just living with COVID as a disease. Our health system, which was the entire reason and rationale for the lockdowns to save our health system while it's been under some strain, it doesn't seem to have collapsed, does it? So really, where is the crisis now?
Yeah, I think a couple of points there. The first is, it's true that the health system coped, and that is tribute to enormous hard work of a lot of people in the system, and underpaid and understaffed and underappreciated probably people. But it's also a tribute to New Zealanders going and getting vaccinated. There's a few people out there who disagree, and I've had a few people criticising me and saying, you got COVID even though you were boosted and all the rest of it. But vaccination makes a difference in terms of keeping people out of hospital. I mean, the science is extremely clear that being boosted significantly reduces your chance of hospitalisation. So that's made a big difference. We've got a good vaccination rate. There's the first couple of points. But yeah, I mean, look, I think things have not turned out quite the way that the doom modelers, I call them. So there's a few people out there who said, the world was going to end and New Zealand was going to not make it through. We have come through it okay, but it is just worth bearing in mind that it's a highly infectious disease and quite serious for a lot of people.
Well, Michael Baker did tell us that it is in terms of its mortality rate, no worse than the flu, but much more highly infectious.
Yeah, but the flu kills quite a few people every year.
Yeah.
So,
well, probably more. Michael Baker thought than COVID has.
Yeah, well, that's possibly true. That is potentially true. I have to wait. I suppose we'll get through the winter and then have a look at the data. But anyway, I mean, the key point is that we do need to return to normality, and people are up for that. And look, people are doing it anyway. And look, it doesn't matter what the government says in some senses. People are doing it anyway, right?
Yeah.
People are travelling again. They're taking their masks off.
Yeah.
They're returning to the workforce. They're not working from home anymore. They're not spending all their time on Zoom or bloody Microsoft Teams and all that stuff. Life is returning to normal.
Yeah, and it just is because that's what people do. I'll tell you one thing that's changed in your life. Your old mate Chippy, your sparring partner, I guess we would call Chris Hipkins, he has moved on from the COVID portfolio and been replaced by Ayesha Vera because he's got the plum easy job of crime, of being police minister. Are you going to miss Chris Hipkins? How do you rate as someone who went up against him? How did you rate his performance? And we got to remember, he was brought in to troubleshoot the issue early on after David Clark went to the beach and went for a bike ride.
Yeah, it's funny you look back. I mean,
that was. I'm with you on that. I think I tweeted. It's a bit like a minister of Churchill's war cabinet putting up fairy lights on his house during the Blitz.
That feels like 5 years ago.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's astonishing.
Yeah.
That's how quick things are. But look, I mean, he got the job under difficult circumstances because there was nobody else, right? Because this is the talent. This is a cabinet that's so short on talent. But when the Prime Minister needs something done, she has to give it to Chris Hipkins because there's nobody else to do it. Look, I quite like Chris, to be honest. He lives down the road from me. He's the next door MP in Rimataka. So I've known him for a number of years. He's very hardworking. He's very conscientious, and I think there is a pragmatism there with him that that is appreciated. I mean, he turned up to the committee, or just on the pre-departure testing, he turned up to the committee a month ago and said, well, look, the value is very low. It will go. And he's just quite upfront about that. And I appreciate that frankness and the candor before committees, because a lot of ministers would have said, basically to dodge the question. Yeah. We've had some good exchanges in the Parliament. One of the new things that we've introduced this term is the ability for a back and forth on a particular topic before question time. And we had sort of 3 or 4 half-hour long conversations in Parliament about various aspects of the COVID response, and I would ask, what I thought were sensible questions, and he would generally give me very sensible answers, and I think that essentially made the response better.
Yeah.
And my whole approach this whole time has been to criticise where the government has done badly and praise them where they've done well, and try and improve things where we can. So, we talked about saliva testing, we talked about pre-departure, we talked about ending MIQ, talked about returning to normal, we talked about the overreach of the Public Health Response Act, various things like that. And I think we've made a difference the whole way through, and I think Chris has been responsive to some of the things we've said. So the government's got a lot of things wrong on the COVID response, I think Chris Hipkins has generally tried his best to make it as good as it
All
can
right.
be.
And now you're up against Aisha Verrill, who is no slug and knows her health stuff.
Well, she certainly knows more about it than I do, that's for sure. I mean, to be honest, like the COVID portfolio is diminishing in importance as we did talk about what we did before, which is that we transition back to normality, but still a few issues that will have to be dealt with. So I think the portfolio will exist for a few more months. But look, I know Aisha pretty well. She's new to Parliament, but she certainly knows more about health than I do. But I probably know a little bit more about Parliament than her. So it'll be an interesting little next
It'll even
period.
out. And look, while I've got you here, Chris, I know that you and Fafs were quite good mates, despite being on opposite sides of the house. He has decided to go and spend time with his family. Do you buy that?
I do actually. Yeah, having talked to him about it, I do. He's got some young kids. He's done 5 years as a minister, 11 years as an MP, because of course he won that by-election in 2010 in Marva. And that's a decent amount of time. And he's a sort of relatively young guy. So
you're about to have a family, aren't you?
Yeah.
So is that your electric plan? At some stage you've got to spend more time with the kids, so it's only like another 5 years?
I've always said that I'll keep running and keep standing as long as I can feel like I can make a contribution. So once I've run out of puff, I'll give it away. But Jenna's due to give birth next week. So
what are you doing while you've got the COVID? Where are they? Because this, you presume
they're here as well. Jenna's got COVID as well.
Oh, okay. So that must be a bit worrying, mate. To be honest, because it's a nervous time anyway. Pregnancy.
Yeah, a little bit. She's okay. She's got she's a bit like me. She's got a bit of a croaky voice, and she's got the COVID as well. So, but we've talked to the hospital, and they'll obviously take her in, and take me as well for the birth. So there's no particular issues there. But yeah, it's obviously not ideal timing.
Okay, well, let's just circle right back to the very beginning. So the pre-departure testing for air travel is coming off. What do you think should be next and when in terms of just getting back to normal?
Look, I think the major next thing is going to be isolation periods more generally.
Yeah.
So they are causing chaos throughout the economy.
Oh, tell me about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
People who can't come to work because they've got to isolate for 7 days. I mean, the US is down to 5.
Yeah.
So that is a something that potentially we could look at. So I think that'll be kind of the next issue, and we'll get into that in due course as well.
Yeah. Bish, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck and speedy recovery to your family, and also, if I don't talk to you beforehand, I hope everything else goes tickety-boo, the big events coming up in your life. Cheers.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
That is Chris Bishop. He is the opposition spokesperson on COVID, and I think he made a really good point there. The whole idea of COVID, the dominance it has in political discourse in our lives, is rapidly diminishing.